If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed. What is the long-term effect of too much information?
Information, I just need some information. I've been dying. Is it lack of education? I've been reading without any transformation. I'm addicted. Is it overstimulation? Hey.
Welcome to the Sixth Sense Report.
Hear ye, come one, come all. You are listening to the Sixth Sense Report with Joel Nikoloff and Darnell Samuels.
Man, this one is gonna be fun.
I don't think so.
Well, I quite enjoy calling out, let's call it mainstream media's antics. So, yeah, but I hear you. At the same time, it's a pretty serious discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know what? I think we could both agree that it's an exciting time in the country's history.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely got the family WhatsApp chats bubbling. So yeah, no. I'm kidding. I'm looking forward to this. In preparation for me to prepare for the show, I was having conversations with people. Those I agree with, those I don't disagree with, mostly with those I disagree with, to help me understand. Because sometimes sometimes we kind of get in our own little bubble and get in our own little wave. And it's helpful to understand where other people are coming from so you can better understand where you're at and how you're seeing things, making sure that you're not being biased. Mm-hmm. So the conversations, I'll say this, Joel, the conversations I was having with people I disagree with was very helpful and insightful. And so at least hopefully, Lord willing, I could speak with some nuance in that. But let me for the listeners, we're talking about the Freedom Convoy 2022.
So maybe I should be a little honest with the listener before we jump right in, because I'm recording from well, I was trying to think of a funny way of putting it, but I'm in Florida.
Are you in Florida?
January 21st, the last possible day for me to leave the country without let's say extra scrutiny. Mm-hmm. Me and the wife and the kids, we packed up, drove 25 hours straight to Florida. So it's
are you coming? Are you coming back? That's what I want to know.
I mean, depends on the outcome of this show. I'm just kidding. I mean, part of me is like, I mean, my plan was to come back at the end of February, but when I left, this Freedom Convoy was, let's say, a twinkle in someone's eye, or it was probably more than that. It was, let's say, being strategically planned. So for me, I left going like, I don't have any hope for Canada. Like the trajectory was like, okay, yeah, basically, Great Reset, World Economic Forum. Basically, Canada looks like the prime test case. And obviously that's a little bit tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. But the point is, the trajectory was basically totalitarian, sort of hyper socialist trajectory. Like, and there's a great talk that a friend of mine sent me right before we had this. So today is Monday for the listener. Let's put a little bit of context. House of Commons was going off tonight. Apparently it was insane. Finally, apparently our politicians were debating COVID, which wasn't a thing for the last 2 years. We essentially suspended democracy, which I would argue is partly why we are where we are with this Freedom Convoy. But my point is, I left, and part of me is a little disappointed because I wasn't around to see some of the convoy. Although I'm sort of glad I don't have to wrestle with the idea of protesting in minus 30-degree weather, because it's too far for me to make that choice. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I remember a week and a half ago watching the videos of the convoy, watching the people cheering it on, and just for the first time during COVID, having hope like that there was a chance to restrain the tyranny that has been going on. And when I use the word tyranny, because some people might think the rights violations are justified, but they're still rights violations. And as I said, we've suspended politics, we've suspended democracy, and just done it in the name of fear without a real debate about the benefit versus the cost. And so this was something going like, okay, there's a reason for hope. And partly the hope was from the manner in which and this continued after the convoys driving through Toronto and all the different places. The politicians and the media were talking about it in a way that was not reflective if you actually saw things for yourself. Right? If you saw some guy standing on a bridge with a video just showing the people that were cheering as it was going by, and then you hear what the politicians are saying, you're like, these are two totally different realities. And so I've seen that perspective. I think you would agree to some extent. We've seen that in mainstream media for a long time. And this is sort of the first time, this is a great example where that blatant lying in the media is going to potentially come to a head. So again, multiple reasons that I've really had hope, even though I've sort of been watching from afar and unable to participate. So, sorry, I know I sort of side railed a little bit there. What about you? What have you seen so far? And then we can, in terms of, and what is your, initial takes on it?
Yeah, no, definitely we're witnessing history, and just trying to put pieces together, be patient, watching, asking questions, reading, being, quick to hear, slow to speak, and see what's going on with this thing. For the listeners, we're going to get into a little bit of background of the Freedom Convoy, and then we're going to get to a survey that was put out by CTV on how Canadians feel about the convoy, and then some social media feedback that Joel and I got from some listeners on what they thought on the issue. And then, of course, Joel and I will answer the question, do we think the convoy will achieve the goal of getting the vaccine mandates lifted? So
I almost gave a spoiler, but I figured I'd keep my smart Alice comments till the end.
Okay. Well, if you try to.
I held back.
Okay. All right. So for those of you who don't know, and actually, there are people who don't know. I was talking with people who don't know what's going on and didn't know that it's going on. Mm-hmm. So, again, the same thing I talk about being in a bubble. Not them, not necessarily us, but just being in a bubble, and whether you don't watch the news or you watch a particular news. So this might be helpful for those who want more background.
I want to reference a video. I won't put in the. I won't say I won't put in the show notes, but the chance of me finding it for the show notes, because there's been so many videos, is tough. There's a video at Vaughan Mills when there was like literally there was like 2,000 or 10,000 people at Vaughan Mills, and a bunch of people caught CBC pointing the camera to like the tail end, but made it look like a couple hundred. And so my point, the reason why I bring it up is like what you just said. There's a bunch of people who don't know. Well, why? Because mainstream media has been continually downplaying this. Oh, a couple thousand people at Parliament Hill when there's like tens of thousands of people, right? Or the Vaughan Mills example that I just gave, right? They try to set up a camera pointing at the tail end of a group when if you point the other direction, it's just this herd of people. And so that was one of a great video that I remember seeing early on, again, when the convoy was coming through Toronto, of just as to why some people have no idea, right? And then obviously why some people think this is a bunch of white supremacist racists. And I'll have a great Instagram page, which is called POC for Freedom Convoy, which is People of Color for Freedom Convoy. That's a pretty good Instagram page to dispel the myth that this is some sort of white supremacist or some ridiculous racist movement or something along those lines. So,
okay,
what did you tell those people? who said they hadn't heard anything or didn't know about it.
Oh, no. I kept it simple. And again, I was trying to preface my words and not try to sound as unbiased as I could, without trying to influence the person's perspective, to kind of hear where they were coming from, just so I can kind of gauge where they're coming from, by them initially hearing what it was about. So for those who don't know what it's about, the Freedom Convoy is an ongoing protest in Canada against COVID-19 vaccine requirements for truckers to re-enter the country by land, introduced by the Government of Canada on January 15th, 2022. Originally composed of several routes traversing all of the Canadian provinces, the truck convoys converged on Ottawa on January 29th, 2022, with a rally at Parliament Hill. The trucking convoys were then joined by pedestrian protesters, and the protests continued into February.
So, for context, where did you got a little source there? What is that? What was your source for that commentary? Because there was one thing I wanted to point out.
That's from Wikipedia.
Okay. So the one point of correction would be that from the beginning, this protest has been about all mandates. So it's been about removing all mandates and restoring all freedoms for all Canadians. And really, the sort of anti-vaccine, anti-vax slur has been used as a means to pigeonhole them. That's why you hear Trudeau constantly say 85% of truckers are vaccinated. This is a fringe movement. Well, the reality is the movement is largely full of both vaccinated and unvaccinated people who are sick of all of this and saying we're done. I would argue it was the straw that broke the camel's back, in the sense of, oh, you want to give us even more reason for supply chain issues by reducing the number of truckers, and that became a catalyst for everybody to go, clearly they just want to continue to control more rather than actually find a way out of the pandemic. And so this movement from the beginning has been against all mandates to restore all freedoms for all Canadians. So yeah, just it doesn't surprise. Oh, that's why I was wondering where you got it from. But Wikipedia totally makes sense, and totally as to why it would be a little bit biased in the way it's described.
I thought the Wikipedia was pretty good.
Yeah, well, other than the one thing at the beginning, right, saying that it was a protest against the trucker vaccine mandates.
That's what I thought it was, but
no, but I would say it was part of it. It was the catalyst, maybe, but it was
okay. That's pretty accurate.
No, but it was never what they were protesting. They were always protesting all mandates. The people at Parliament Hill.
But as initially, as a catalyst, like you said, initially when the news broke, they were probably mad because they had to get vaccinated, and they're like, you know what, let's just make this a big thing.
But this is the thing. It's like the people involved are largely vaccinated individuals. This is what, and from the beginning, when we've had these conversations, I said this only changes when the vaccinated stand up. Right? Because the unvaccinated are largely, maybe they are a fringe minority in Trudeau's words, but that's why he's been so ignorant of the reality that it's not the unvaccinated that are protesting. It's both vaccinated and unvaccinated. It's people that are like, okay, I did what you told me to, and I'm still locked down. That's why Jordan Peterson's talking, right? Like Jordan Peterson's all over this now. He got vaccinated early on. He had some great quotes, something like, you told me to get vaccinated, and now you still won't leave me alone. He's like, I'm done. This is stupid.
Well, you sent me a survey from CTV News.
Mm-hmm. Was that I think it's CTV Ottawa too.
CTV it said CTV News, and it said it was a quick poll, January 25th, 2022. Do you support the truckers convoy coming to Ottawa? And it showed 78% said yes, 22% said no. Right? 28,999 people voted.
Yeah, and I would say you can. There's been a number of polls, similar ones, right? I saw one recently. I'm gonna try and see if I can pull it up. It was basically something like, should the protesters be shut down? And something like 90% were like, nope. um, and then, I mean, if you look at the poll right now from CTV News Ottawa, of course, you get this very loaded question. Are you optimistic the occupation in Ottawa will end soon? But yeah, no, there, for the most part, okay, so January 31st, is it time for the truckers' protest to end? So this is CTV Ottawa. 20,000 votes. Sorry, 28,000 people voted. 75% said no on January 31st, that it was time to end the protest. It looks like that's sort of the last one there. Well, other than this occupation one, but even that has only 3,000 votes, and 80% said no. So every vote that I've been seeing regarding the protests, the mandates, all this stuff has been going very much in agreement with the truckers' protest, or maybe demonstration is the better word. So it's the idea that this is a fringe minority, again, just unsubstantiated, and it's pure politics, demonization. But that's sort of what we should be expecting at this point from our politicians, no?
Yeah, well, I thought it was kind of funny. Just looking at the looking at the survey, it was still. I think it was still. I don't know. I would like to see. I'd like to see some current numbers and see how many more people voted to get like a larger number of people voting. Just to make sure that it isn't just early hype,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was something I was just trying to. So I'm not really sold on the numbers too early. I don't want to get too excited,
Mm-hmm.
right? And get sucked into the hype, but but essentially, yes, it shows that it seems like people are tired and are looking for another option, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's pretty cool.
Well, and so there's an Angus Reid poll that a friend of mine just posted saying, fringe as the comment. And the Angus Reid poll is that, is it time to end restrictions and let people self-isolate if they're at risk? And agree or disagree. Every province, with the exception of Atlantic, maybe, ATL, says agree more than disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the total of Canada was 54% said agree and 40% said disagree. Now I would say it's still pretty divided, but that's a bigger question. Without going down the rabbit hole, this gets into the whole, a couple Joe Rogan podcasts, the comments about mass formation and things along those lines. But there's a really good video I saw from this guy Viva Frey, this former lawyer out of Quebec who's now a YouTuber, basically standing in the middle of Ottawa, and on both sides of the street was the protesters and the counter-protesters. He's like, this is literally a scene out of V for Vendetta with the way the culture is divided.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. There's definitely a polarization right now with the culture, especially in Canada. I think, what was going on at the trucker convoys and seeing people on the bridge, I think was the most visible sign of unity that we've seen for those who disagree with the mandates. And somebody messaged me and they're like, "Yo, Darnell, are you gonna go out to the bridge? Are you gonna go out, to support the truckers?" And I was like, minus 25 degree weather? Hell no. Yo, honestly, man, this is how you know. This is how you know.
Dude, I
People-
agreed.
Hold on. This is how
No,
you
I know where you're
know.
going.
This
I
is how
agree.
you know people are locked in. And at that point, I realized, you know what, man? You know, as black people, you know, we like to think we're tough. But yo, man, like seeing all those white people out there freezing their butts off.
It's not just white people.
No, hold on. Look, yo, I'm top. This is why I'm on the podcast. I'm speaking for a particular minority group. Yes, there were some who didn't mind, but I'm speaking for another section, not the whole group. Not the whole group, all right? Just a section that like I got to keep it 100, bro.
Mhm.
Like it was cold. And the point I'm making, Joel, is that
Mhm.
really inspired me and showed me
Mm.
those people's dedication. Like it wasn't like
Mhm.
summer. Gee, it wasn't like you had your lawn chairs out there and people were out there drinking a beer. Like that was sending me a message. And again, it made me feel a ways where I'm like, oh man, like, yo, these guys are really dedicated to the cause. Right. And like I said, like, yo, these guys are tough, man. They're tough. You know, to stand out in the cold and just to support the truckers in their movement. I'm like, yeah, nah, this is definitely for real. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. How about you?
I
I mean, you're in Florida, but if you were down here, you would have attended.
So I've gone to, in the summer, I went to a rally. I went to one of a couple of I think I went twice, but I went with like my whole family. Right. So I think, you know, going with my kids would have been sort of like, you know, no chance. Right. But dude, the stuff I've seen, like I would have loved to have been able to go to Ottawa. Although apparently Trudeau and his, you know, unlimited coffers has bought up a whole bunch of hotels so that they couldn't. So not too many people could have showed up this past weekend.
Yeah. Well, I'm planning to possibly go down to Ottawa for journalism purposes and as a
Witness
historian.
history?
Yeah, no, and of course for the podcast, but also like me as a history teacher. I know I'm not a prophet, but I play one on the podcast. I know that this will definitely be a lesson plan, an essay, a constant conversation in Canadian history. So I want to be able to say like, okay, I was a part of it. I seen it on the ground level and what it was really like and felt it kind of like, you know, I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but kind of like the Raptors winning the NBA championship. Like, you know, it's one thing. It's one thing when the Blue Jays win or the Maple Leafs win. It's just Toronto celebrating, but it's another thing when a whole country celebrates something in unity. And I what's interesting is that the what we see with the convoys, that the celebration is about Canada, and looking at it like comparing it to the, you know, Black Lives Matter protests. The difference is that the truckers are joyous. It's a celebration. Like people are singing, people are dancing or trying to dance. I'm hearing Christian worship music. I'm seeing a lot of laughter, a lot of playfulness. Yeah, and it's one of those things like, okay, I'm like, oh, and singing a lot of singing of the national anthem, and I love the singing of the national anthem, right? That's my fight music.
Well, dude, I'm glad you say that, because like when I said about having hope, you know, part of what I'm talking about is like, I used to be prideful to be Canadian. Now, part of that was like the hockey, you know, component. Like we always, you know, we're the top of the world in hockey for the most part. And I, you know, I identify as a hockey player, if you want to call it that. But realistically, all of this last 2 years, I've sort of been like, I'm not going to wear a Canadian flag on my shirt anymore. You know, like I got a pair of Roots pants with a Canadian, little emblem on the pant, and I'm like, that's good enough. Like, I don't want more than that. Just but this protest has made me prideful again to be Canadian, to be like, so hearing the national anthem, seeing those songs, like, I had a sense of pride and joy, but also like, dude, we're a catalyst for so much. Like the convoy, basically convoys being started around the world. Like Australia's got a convoy that apparently is like, I haven't checked in on it in the last couple of days, but like I remember seeing something where they basically set up camp in much like their capital city. I think it's called Canberra or something. It's a city that nobody heard of, much like Ottawa. Everyone thinks, Toronto is the capital of Canada, who's not from Canada, right? I think the similar thing with Australia. Like I would have thought Sydney or, the other popular cities. So, but my point is, they've had a convoy there. Apparently they set up a camp. The police raided it. So they set up like 4 more as a place because more convoys just kept coming. And so, Australia is getting a level of pushback too. And it's Canada that was the catalyst for this, right? Maybe that's partly because our convoy took 4 days to get across the country. And so there was a constant sort of like building behind this thing. I don't know, but yeah, I've really what you've said is I've heard so many stories, whether it be, I have someone sent a message in a group I'm in, they're in Ottawa because their family's truckers. And like, I was setting up a prayer meeting and I thought like 10 people were going to show up and 100 people showed. Right. And so, but
interesting. Yeah.
But there's also this level of like, I don't care, dude. I've seen flags or not flag, but like posters about, people from the Pride community sort of being like, in on this and just different, all these communities, whether it's like, there's what's that dance called? It's called the Baccarat, the Indian dance. I'm probably butchering it.
I know Bacchanal, but
maybe that's what, I don't know. I saw it worded, but anyways, the point was I saw a Instagram post that was like, this is the only time this is like the once in a while you'll see the dance with a hockey stick. So the guy's got a Canadian flag on a hockey stick doing this like Indian dance to Indian music at Parliament Hill at a protest. Like it's a party, bro, in a way that like you were talking about contrasting with BLM. Like I was going to say that, like, I mean, I saw the protest and I would almost say anger for the most part from those protests. But
and rightfully
no,
so,
I'm not necessarily saying like there isn't, but you could say
it's a different vibe for real.
But you could say there's a lot of reason to be angry or hateful from these people. And the truckers are doing the complete opposite. They're like overtly trying to be nonviolent. Over, anyone who steps out of line, they're demonized and condemned and told to go away, right? So, I don't know if you want to go down the whole like Confederate flag, Nazi flag stuff that showed up, but we can
hit that. We can hit that on another episode. Because we have feedback from some of our listeners that we gotta touch on. Gotta shout our people out. So there was a question that was posed on my social media. I put, what do you think of the trucker protests? Will they achieve their goal? And so this was good for conversation to hear what different people thought. And some people inboxed me quietly on the low. And then some people addressed me in public, but I'll read some of the comments. So one person said, in response to the question, no, strength in number when the voices are divided. So no strength in number when the voices are divided. And then another person said, I hope so. Another person says, only God knows, praying hands and a heart. Another person said, good on them for protesting. Knowing Trudeau, this isn't enough. Another person said, I think the protest is good. The government is too stubborn to cave, but it will make a massive point. Another person said, they can't even really articulate their goal. So no! Another person says, love them. Yes. Another person put no with exclamation point. And some doofus said restore rights and freedoms beyond their wildest dreams, worldwide inspiration.
Calling me a doofus?
The listeners are probably like, "What? What's Darnell talking?" No, that was Joel who
put the last
inbox.
comment.
Yeah, with the last comment. But shout out to our guy Tony Lemma.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So he gave me and Joel an in-depth answer.
Hi, I'm Darnell Samuels. You may remember me from such podcasts as Thanks Coach and The Sixth Sense Report. When Joel and I are not studying for the next episode, we're paying bills for hosting and production. If you want to help us out, you can make a donation of any amount by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. If you broke, don't worry about it. You can subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast catcher. If you did this already, then you can share the show with a friend. Joel, Jeezy, and I appreciate your support. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
So, a most interesting question, Darnell Samuels, and it's because of questions like these in my own mind that I listen to the Sixth Sense Report so intently. So many episodes can be said to revolve around this very question. I'd begin by first saying that I stand against all violence and all hate, and I don't condone the actions of any of the bad apples in the protest. I never have condoned such actions in any protest or civil disobedience activities. I would argue that at heart, this issue begins with our current federal government. They have been peddling in divisive politicking, in gaslighting as a divide and conquer approach to governance. We've seen this almost everywhere, and it has divided Canadians. I could speak at some length at this point and cite numerous instances going back to when Justin Trudeau became the leader of the federal Liberal Party. All this has been from a leader that dressed up in blackface on numerous occasions prior to his political career. However, what's needed is not just better leadership, in my view. What's needed is for us to address our representative democracy in a more meaningful way. That would mean legislative, electoral, and democratic reforms. Our first past the post system has actually brought us to where we are today. We need proportional representation, citizen-initiated surveys and referendums, and citizen-initiated recall laws. We need to bring power back into the hands of the people so that as we confer power onto our elected officials, they will continue to listen to us even after they are elected. Thank you, Tony Lemma. Joel, what's your take on this?
Well, I mean, I think he's got a lot of good points. I did reply to him on that comment. I won't go into much of what I said, but my only, I don't want to say it was a pushback because I was basically agreeing with him, but I thought there was other aspects of our system we need to address, like the fact that, lobbying is such a problem where politicians, I think what Tony's sort of getting at is they run on how to get elected. And once they're elected, they listen to their lobbyists because they're refilling their coffers for the next election. And the people don't refill their coffers. The people only fill their votes. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of, the feedbacks I gave were sort of along the lines of how do we limit the lobbying? How do we, it's basically power that the government has that is abused and exploited. And so I don't disagree with him in any regard regarding the changes. I think one of the things I was thinking about, and this is sort of I think at first pass, it wasn't intuitive to me, but if you get to first past the post, I also want more conservative parties, right? Because I actually want a bigger diversity. So I would argue, some of the stronger political environments are those that have like 9 parties and they all have representation. And what that forces is you no longer have solutions that are only for select groups of people. Because 9 parties, like if you're using sort of a proportional voting system, you now have to appeal to a diversity of perspectives, not just the ruling party who got enough votes or the ruling handful of parties in our Canadian minority government system currently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and assuming they're not going to suspend democracy like we have, potentially you have a greater ability to restrain the tyranny and prevent, the totalitarian government from taking over. Not to say that we're there, but if we want to prevent the Pol Pot, the Mao, the Stalin, the Hitlers, part of it is how do we prevent them from gaining power and deceiving the people? And I think proportional voting systems have actually some rationale as a means to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think one of the some of the questions or the pushback I was getting behind the scenes was some people were saying like, okay, well, again, are you being loving to your neighbor by pushing for the truckers or being for the truckers? Because the truckers, they don't represent all Canadians. And there are some Canadians who think that, especially Christians, who think this is not loving and this is not something Christians should be supporting. So as much as, you said like, there's a lot of people that came in on the prayer meeting or people may be singing worship songs at these events. There is still a group of Christians that disagree about this issue. Well, what would you say to them about that?
My first question would be, have they read Proverbs 29?
Proverbs 29. Hold on, let me look that up.
So 29. It's verse 7. Since you're Googling it, I'll paraphrase it. But
Google it, man. I got my Bible. I don't Google, man.
I'm just
sword drill, Sunday school, man.
Yeah. I actually have my Bible in front of me, but I hear you flipping pages, so I'll let you get there. But okay. Proverbs 29 talks about 29:7.
29:7. Amen. Amen, Pastor Joel Steen.
Is in a reference to.
Okay, let me read it here. Proverbs 29, verse 7. A righteous man knows the rights of the poor. A wicked man does not understand such knowledge.
So the point here is that for me, if Christians and churches are not concerned about the violations of the violations of other people's rights, my question is a number of questions. Do they understand what rights are? Do they understand the history of constitutions? Circa Andre Schutten, Ezra Institute, and the education that comes, through that. Do they understand the idea of 3 branches of government? Do they understand the ultimate laws of the land being, the Constitution and not the elected officials? And so I bring that up to say, if you don't comprehend that rights are being violated, I would say, is it because you don't understand rights?
Well, I guess part of it too is the right is that, we're trying to consider others more important than yourselves, and of course, right, love your neighbor. And so loving our neighbor is protecting them by getting vaccinated.
Well, but I would say that's an oversimplification, right? That's pigeonholing. That's, that's not a voluntary situation. That's compelling your brother to do something you think is right. But again, that fails to comprehend that that person who you want to compel to get vaccinated is an image bearer of God. And as such, I need to show him respect to, if that is what God is calling him to do and he's sinning, is that between me and him or him and God?
Well,
Right.
I guess the pushback would be that the person's sinning because they can be putting people at harm, being asymptomatic with the virus and potentially putting somebody at risk of dying.
Yeah. So I mean, the Bible talks about, also this. I don't want to take this text out of context, but my people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. If at this point in the pandemic you think that asymptomatic spread is a problem and you're putting other people at risk, I would say you're exceptionally ignorant and listening to lies.
And what? Listening to what?
Lies.
Okay.
Because it's undeniable. Like, and this is where, like, so I would straight up say they're the one who's in the wrong. They're the one who's actually sinning because you're compelling your brother based on a falsehood, let alone. Now, by no means am I trying to say, oh, we don't have to consider loving our neighbor. No, of course. If you have a neighbor who's afraid of the unvaccinated, okay, how are you going to love on them? It's not by going to get vaccinated. It's much bigger than that, right? Like to say, oh, I have to do the thing because I would go to Romans 14. No, I was thinking about the tyranny of the younger brother was the sermon. It actually is Romans 14. It was a sermon.
Romans 14. Yeah, 14. That is the section on meat offered to idols, the weaker brother, and the weaker Jew, stronger Jew.
Yes. So at Ezra Institute, Tim Stevens was preaching, and he preached on Romans 13 and Romans 14. And his sermon on Romans 14 was the tyranny of the younger brother, right? And the idea being the younger brother is afraid. So does that mean we just adhere to whatever or afraid is in my context? Obviously, in the text context, it's not fear, but do we adhere to the weaker brother's sin or potential sin? No, we actually show love and compassion to the scenario such that I don't want to be a stumbling block, but I don't force everybody to comply with their ideology that's false.
You know what, Joey, I never considered that point. I never heard that nuance in regards to a person. So the stronger brother, weaker brother, stronger Jew, weaker Jew, meat offered to idols. The weaker person does not feel that it's right to eat meat offered to idols. But if that weaker person view is sin, then technically you can't necessarily accommodate the person in their sinful belief.
Well, and you shouldn't mandate their simple belief.
Oh well, okay, yeah, well, okay, well, let's take it.
But this is the point. That's the tyranny of the younger brother. That's the point that Tim Stevens was making.
Tyranny of the younger brother
or weaker brother,
weaker brother.
That's what the sermon was literally called.
Oh my, tyranny. Oh, okay, I gotta look that one up.
So
that's interesting. That's interesting. I gotta go back and look that up.
If anything, I should email him to get it. He has this really great chart showing a spectrum, and on one end, you've got essentially not loving by the stronger brother, and on the other end, you've got not loving by the weaker brother, and it's the accommodations in the middle that is loving. Right. And so for the stronger brother, well, then I'm not going to be a stumbling block. I'm not going to put this, I'm not going to show up at the guy's house with meat that I know is sacrificed to idols, be like, eat, and make him feel like he's, but I'm also not going to, as the weaker brother, if I hear of them going into a scenario of someone else doing it, I'm not going to condemn them because of my personal convictions, right? And we have other texts in the Bible that talks about this, right? Like if I'm convicted on, let's call it a gray issue that's not explicit in the Bible, am I called to tell other people that they need to follow my convictions?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. I guess the way how I'm seeing it is two observations. That I think the convoy does have theological implications as it relates to the church, and whether it's should they be opening during lockdowns, vaccine passports to get in the church, singing with masks on, being at full capacity. All these things practically affect the church. So these are reasons why Christians would lean towards supporting the convoy. My response to somebody who would use the argument of loving your brother, I would say, and this is not my point, but this is from actually Pastor Mark Dever. He made a point that we have to be careful of Bible verses that could be used either way to support either argument, right? Because it could easily be flipped to say, oh, well, if you love your neighbor, get vaccinated, or if you love your neighbor, well, fight for those who had their EI taken away. Yep, right? Yep. Had their job. So this is how I would respond, and it's for the listeners as well. I think the best way to respond is to say, okay, you know what? Yes, we love our neighbors. We love our neighbor to the right of us, and we love our neighbor to the left of us. Right? Like, even right to the right of us, and we love our neighbor to the left of us. We want to be considerate and gracious towards those who feel unsafe about the virus, but also we have to also support those who feel confident around the virus. And so as a Christian, that's us being gracious to both sides and not being partial, right? Because the scripture talks about not being being impartial, not being partial towards those to anybody, right? Because that's how we show love. So what does that look like to show grace and love your neighbor who chooses not to get vaccinated but can't go to the gym, has lost their job, can't fly, all these things. So these are all things to consider. But just for the sake of time, we got to move on.
So I would just say the one way I would put it is that there's an aspect of it's got to be in grace and truth, right? Like, right. You can't have one without the other.
Right. Okay. So now for your 2 cents, Joel. Okay. So okay. Do you think the convoy will achieve its goal?
I would argue it already has.
Oh, what the? What you talking about, Joel Jeezy?
The biggest tool in the Conservative Party is no longer around.
The biggest tool is that a pun? Is that a bar?
Tool. O'Toole is
biggest
a tool.
Tool? Okay.
O'Toole is a tool. He's a tool of the liberals. Like
he's a tool of the man.
I posted on social media. Actually, I posted on Twitter that after so. Anyways, the convoy stuff was essentially causing a rift in the party because he's been playing the center the whole time. When it comes, during the election, he was playing the center on the vaccine stuff, not at all holding a conservative, sort of rights-based position at all. No concern for, going against the mandates in any regard. It was always like, even his comment was like, oh, we need to have vaccine clinics for the truckers. Like no concept that the people at this point in time, the people who have not got the vaccine are not getting it. Like there's a hard line there. They're not getting it. And if you've had conversations with people who got it originally, there's like, I've had conversations with people who message me being like, dude, I got this vaccine early because I thought I was protecting grandma. I want to see my family. I want to travel. And now I realize like, this is a joke. It doesn't even protect my grandma. It maybe protects me. And I didn't need to be protected. I wasn't worried about COVID. I'm definitely not getting a booster. So my point is that like, Toole was just I use the term red Tory, right? He's essentially...
Hold on. What's a red Tory?
So red being liberal, Tory being a conservative. He's basically, there's in the US they have a Republican term is called Rhino, Republican in name only, same concept. And they essentially are, more on the liberal side or lean very liberal, but have, wear the blue hat in Canada. Right. So, Peter MacKay is the same. He was the guy who ran sort of against O'Toole. And he left the party after losing. Now, if he comes back, potentially he'll run and try to take that position again. So I would say, and you hear Candace I think her name is Candace Bergen, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
She's essentially the interim leader tonight in the House of Commons. She's like, when is the Prime Minister going to tell Canadians all mandates are gone? When are you going to give us a date that all O'Toole never would have spoken like that. So with O'Toole,
what about Pierre?
Pierre's been relatively good in terms of blasting the Liberals on their finance perspective. But that's where he was the finance critic for a while, and now I don't know what his title is now, but he's been really good, sort of criticizing the Liberals' policies. I would say he just had a video that came out as like his campaign speech. I was very impressed. But
so was I.
I would say,
I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid.
Is it a winning strategy? Is it someone who's going to get the lead and then fall back into lobbyists? So, or is he actually sort of promoting a very, let's get the government out of the way so the people can rebuild the economy? Like that's the rhetoric, right? And let's see if he actually does that. He's going to cut red tape on production of houses, because that's our problem. The supply of housing takes twice as long as the amount of immigrants we have coming in. So, I mean, sidebar totally, but my point is, he's running for the election. So the issue with, just to go back to Conservatives, as I understand it, Candace took the interim leadership, but she can't run for leadership, which actually makes her more dangerous, in my opinion, to the Liberals, because she has nothing to lose. And so, apparently the House of Commons debate tonight was on fire. Like, it was actually like a debate. Again, for the last 2 years, none of the sort. Everybody's been kowtowing to each other and it's been a joke. If you vote against something, you get kicked out of your party. That's basically what we've seen. That and what we've seen, inspiring people across the world to start other, like I said about Australia starting theirs. And there's a number of other Saskatchewan's announced the ending of all mandates. That sort of was already, I think it was already happening, kind of. You've got there's a second sort of convoy in Alberta with a standoff at the Coutts American border. That's potentially all the rural MPs almost got Jason Kenney kicked out of his party, who's the sitting premier of that province. So, you've got this conservative uproar within their parties that would have never happened without this convoy. That's causing the political atmosphere to actually have something other than sort of what I said before. Oh, we're just on this trajectory to, Agenda 2030. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. World Economic Forum, sort of fourth industrial revolution, the Great Reset type of stuff. There's actually pushback on some of those principles or concepts being applied. And, we've got, let's call it runaway inflation. And if we don't have any sort of political discourse, that's going to make things excessively worse. And so I think for the most part, they have achieved the goal, which is to cause some discourse. If I would say to you, from what I've seen, the rhetoric from the truckers is, until all mandates are gone, we're not leaving. So I think it's very likely that they will succeed. I just saw a CBC article that was like, basically large towing companies are like, yeah, there's no way we could get them out of there if the truckers don't want to move. So basically, the government's handcuffed, and although the rhetoric from, I'll call them the new cathedral, which is, government and politicians combined, or legacy media and the government, has been very demeaning and divisive, the support just continues to grow. You've got, again, we haven't even touched the GoFundMe controversy. Essentially the government took ownership of being able to get, sorry, I shouldn't say the government. I have an article. I believe it was the Ottawa police. This is the headline of the post-millennial article. Ottawa police admit to lobbying GoFundMe to withhold funds from Canadian truckers. And so you've got the GoFundMe page getting shut down when they were over $10 million. Give Send Go has launched as an alternative. It's already over $5.5 million US. And so, this is not going away anytime soon. And I would argue, it seems very likely that I could come home at the end of February and not have to do testing to get back in the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What about you? What's your 2 cents?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of layers to peel back with this. So I want to make 2 points. The first one is concerning racism at the protests, and I just want to be clear that racism has nothing to do with the Freedom Convoy, right? It's not racism that's keeping me from getting on a plane to go to England to see my Uncle Mark. It's not racism keeping me from pickup games at LA Fitness. And it's not racism that's keeping me from, putting food on my table, right? It's the vaccine mandates that's keeping me from doing those things. So there's a group of visible minorities who don't care if it's the KKK or even Satan himself standing out in the cold at those rallies, right? If they can achieve the goal of getting back their civil liberties, then those people aren't complaining. Now, as it relates to answering the question, I would say to those who say no, but want to say yes, they think the truckers will get the vaccine mandates lifted. I'm going to give you 3 things to consider that'll increase your hope. So point 1, political pressure. So with the Conservative Party leader, like Joel said, Aaron O'Toole, getting the boot for being indecisive on the Freedom Convoy issue, it's opened up the door for Pierre Poilievre, I think I pronounced his name right, who's more of a legitimate Conservative Party leader, who is uniting divided Conservative Canadians.
Or Leslie Lewis.
Well, either way, this is definitely, they're kind of riding the wave of the Freedom Convoy to unite a once divided conservative group of Canadians. At this point, whether you're PPC or Christian Heritage, I think at this point, everybody's just like, look, man, let's just get this vaccine mandate off the table, and come together to see what they can achieve. My second point is that there's international pressure. So the time is now, if you think about it. Other countries have already lifted their vaccine mandates: England, France, Israel, Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Ireland. Right? So we have to remember that politicians set trends. Politicians don't set trends. They follow them. So what that means is that social change doesn't happen from the top down, is to throw money at the problem, but that social change happens from the bottom up, from the grassroots level. And so that leads me to my final point, the social pressure. So the Freedom Convoy has captured the hearts of Canadians and also the world, as Joel said before. So we don't have to be fooled by legacy media, right? The truckers don't just represent the unvaccinated, but they also represent the vaccinated. So we all have friends and family who got vaccinated for the wrong reasons, fearing the vaccine mandate more than the virus. I was watching the movie the other night, and the Green Book, And there was a quote in it, and the guy said, "Genius is not enough. It takes courage to change people's hearts." Now, with all due respect, no disrespect to Justin Trudeau, but I got to call it like I see it, talk it like I be it, walking my walk, thugged out, orthopedic. I've noticed that he hasn't shown any genius as it relates to these policies. And he hasn't shown any courage in confronting the truckers. Right? There's an old proverb, pastoral proverb that says, "A mist in the pulpit is a fog in the pew." Shout out to Phil Thomas.
So,
a mist in the pulpit is a fog in the pew, meaning that if your leader isn't all there, then those people who are following will be just even more lost. So the point is that what we're seeing now politically, socially, internationally, is that there's blood in the water, and the sharks are circling the Parliament Hill building. So what we see with the Freedom Convoy is that they're uniting and inspiring Canadians with something we've never seen in decades, and that's courage. And that's my 2 cents.
And I'll finish it off with a great joke that I heard about Trudeau. If hide and go seek was an Olympic sport, Justin Trudeau would have a gold medal.
What do you guys think?
This guy's nowhere to be found. Anyways,
what do you guys think?
Yeah, what's your 2 cents? I'm assuming we'll be coming back to this issue. Hopefully to some extent when it publishes this Friday. Maybe this is already said and done, but something tells me it's going to be a little bit more drawn out. So, maybe
a little more drama.
A little more drama, a little more drawn out, a little more. I mean, even knowing how slow government seems to work, even if they're going to roll back these mandates, it'll be hopefully some goalposts that don't move, but potential moving goalposts might result in Trucker Convoy 2.0.
But let us know what you guys think. You know how to reach us. 6cents report@gmail.com.
6 Cents Report on Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, maybe we'll bring a guest on to chat about this as it culminates, and maybe get some additional 2 cents. So if you have any other questions or things about this you want us to chat about, let us know.
6 cents makes change.
But you heard me? Does that make sense?
Madden and Mitchell Media.